Hey everyone, welcome back to the Lookout. Today's last day of August. Still fire season. So, welcome in here. If you're missing our funk, there will be funk again, but gotta throw out some country music once in a while. I'm from the country. Where I'm from, all the town's all surrounded with big timber landowners, and there's no cowboys. You go to Westwood, you go to the football game there, and you don't see any kids wearing black hats. You go down to Greenville, where there's little farms everywhere, Quincy, Portola. There's gonna be someone at the football game wearing a black hat, driving a big truck. Westwood, not so much. We didn't have cowboys there. Anyway, that's some trivia, some northeastern California trivia for you. So tonight we're gonna do something a little bit different. We don't have a lot of super exciting fire intel for you, but we do have, as far as like, here's what just happened 10 minutes ago. The fires that are going on are kind of chunking along. Nothing crazy going on right now. So we're going to talk about kind of seasonal outlook now. We're going to talk about a little bit of the intel that we do have on the fires that are happening. And we're going to show you videos and still photos of forests in California, talk about kind of reading fuel loading. And we're going to show you some videos of prescribed fire too. But we're just kind of talk about forestry, fuel loading, figuring out how to read a forest, and also kind of do that through the lens of these fires we're looking at. So we're not going to stay on super long night, but we just want to do something a little different. So let me cue up a little background music, see if that works. We're going to put on our Lookout theme song here. Right. Let me know if this doesn't work, but people are asking about Salmon River. So we're going to start off with the Gifford fire. No, sorry. That was so last week. Got some imagery here from the that fire, that's down there. Garnet Fire. This fire's burning out east of Fresno. Yeah, I can't do it with the music in the background. All right, Garnet. So we got some cool imagery to show you from the Garnet Fire from day before yesterday. Fire basically started down here in the Kings River, burned over into the North Fork of the Kings, and then it started burning up the north side of the valley there. So we're out to the east of Fresno, kind of in the front country of the Sierra Nevada. So the fire started off, run up out of Kings River, back down, crossed and ran up the north side of the North Fork of the Kings River, and then it spotted back over here. And as you can see, day before yesterday at noon, the fire was kind of becoming established in the bottom of the canyon on the south side. It had kind of come over and run up this side, and then it got established over here. And then now this red line is kind of where it's gotten to by last night. So the fires, this is kind of this multi-headed beast that's chewing up into the Sierra Nevada. Not in a huge hurry sometimes. Sometimes it is. This fire kind of, if you go back and look at our broadcast from about the 24th, this fire was really small, and then it got enormous, crazy kind of mountain wave winds on it, the thunderstorm passage, and it went to like 4,000 acres. I saw a Facebook post from a guy who lives down here that I guess loves to stir up the shit on Facebook, and he's like, "Oh, Forest Service blew it. They just monitored this fire, and then it blew up." I got an inquiry into the Forest Service to kind of just to see their dispatch logs from the beginning of this, because I was watching. They were dispatching a lot of things in this area when this fire burst out, and I didn't see anything about them just kind of sitting on fires and not doing anything about it. So I'm all skeptical when people don't kind of share their sources. Oh, I heard this happen. It's like, well, show us, please bring the facts. We'd like to know if that's true. Anyway, so I got an inquiry into the public information officer on the Garnet Fire, about the initial attack. Just kind of curious if this is true or if it's just Facebook bullshit. Anyway, what we want to talk about here on Garnet, and something we do have to offer, is fires burning up here into Teakettle Reserve, Teakettle Experimental Forest. And we've talked about how there's been a whole bunch of planning work done to try to do a 3,000 acre burn out in here, and how it's lagged because the Forest Service takes forever to get plans done, and in the meantime things burn up. So here's Teakettle. Here's where the fire was last night. We don't know, like, as of right this minute, how far the fire has burned into Teakettle, but as part of them trying to do a big burnout here, they hired a non-profit think tank called the Climate Wildfire Initiative, and they're making a movie about the whole project and what it takes to do it, etc. And so a friend of mine is hired to go out there, and so I kind of helped him out the night before last. I did some kind of Google Earth scouting for him, and he went out there and tied in with the team and kind of made his way out to the potential lookout spot. And what I was interested in here is, I want to see what the fire's like when it gets into Teakettle. I was hoping that he would get some video of fuels. I'm not part of his project. I'm just helping him out. And so I was like, okay, well, let's see. If you're going to go out in the front of a fire that's blowing up the mountain, where can we put? Where's a good place to hang out that's safe? So I just looked in here and I found this spot here in the rocks where you could comfortably hang out in the middle of a forest fire. And so he went out there and checked it out. And so he sent me some phone videos of that. He can't really share like the main videos he's working on because it's commercial stuff, but he sent me some phone videos and I'll share those. Anyway, what we're interested in here is like, okay, it looks likely that Teakettle is going to burn in this fire. When you look at kind of the terrain out here, there's not a lot of great options for them to have a direct attack that will hold up to the spot fires they're getting. So I just wanted to pull up the terrain here. That's not it. All right, so this is the Teakettle Experimental Forest, and it's an interesting kind of cup of sorts, or it's kind of this upper basin, right? And the fire is kind of now established in the basin, and there's some spot fires. And so what they're looking at, I think, is, they wanted, for this burn, they wanted to prep a box around the outside of this basin and burn it under prescribed conditions. And so, and we've talked in the previous broadcast about like how hard it is for them to get the wildlife surveys, NEPA and everything. And now that there's a wildfire, they can just go out and they can bulldoze and do whatever they want. So the hope is that like the people that want to do the prescribed burn also talked to the people that are out there with bulldozers. But when it comes down to it, there's only a few places on the landscape that are really suitable for putting in an indirect control line. And they're the same whether you're on a wildfire or on prescribed fire. And so it sounds like potentially this is going to get burned as a prescribed burn kind of tactics during a wildfire. And that would ultimately probably be the best possible outcome, since the Forest Service is incapable of actually getting prescribed fire done when it's not, when they have to actually do the paperwork. So the best outcome I could see would be they put in the line around this thing and they use their crews and ping pong balls, drones and everything else, and we're actually able to backfire down through this and get prescribed fire type fire behavior. Now the reason that it's hard for them to go direct in this kind of country, and the fire has been kind of behaving itself, why can't they just go in here and put out right on the edge the fire? So I thought it'd be interesting just to look at some imagery here to talk about that, because it's a good question. Like, okay, well, if the fire's behaving itself, why don't they just go put it out? So this is one of Sasha's videos out there. I'm jealous of his camera. Okay, so what do we have? We have kind of these thickets of cedar. We've got some kind of scraggly fir. We got some bigger pine, and then we've got this kind of dead brush here, ceanothus and manzanita. Mainly ceanothus, and it hasn't burned for a long time. You can tell by the amount of dead material on the brush. So right now the fire where these guys got out to is just kind of just kind of licking along, burning through. And kind of the problem is just that these thickets of cedar, this is what you get when you don't have fire in the landscape for a long time, and then it's torching out the larger trees. But right now, a lot of the reason the fire is moving so slow is just it's kind of creeping its way along through the ground fuels. The problem for kind of direct attack here is that because so much of this stuff is torching, is it spots. And it's dry enough that this stuff torches, it spots, it starts a new spot fire. So if you're going to get in there and try to do a direct control on, you have to figure out how you're going to deal with the spots. And the problem is that the fire is big enough on this whole flank that it's not like you can have crews running around swatting out every little spot. They do have heavy helicopters and air tankers, but those have been kind of less effective on what's been kind of the smokier side of the fire. So we talked about a lot. You got your kind of prevailing wind, comes out of the west here, and your winds come this way every day. Your smoke goes out this way. And so your helicopters can kind of work this windward edge best because they have clear air. But all this stuff that's burning is smoking out this side of the fire. And so it's really difficult to use the aircraft tactically under the smoke, and especially also in this ground that's so steep. So if we come in here to where the fire is just kind of working its way into Teakettle, yeah, maybe you could use helicopters and go direct here if you have, clear enough air that they can work with you. But one of the problems of kind of engaging a whole bunch of firefighters in a direct attack out here is, one, there's snags everywhere, and two, the fire is like really well established down below here. And so if we turn off our kind of x-ray view, it's like you've got these crazy steep gullies with thick oaks kind of coming up in here, where if the air clears out, we've already seen on this fire that there's potential for explosive kind of fire behavior. And so if you've got like, a couple hundred people working down at the end of this road, going direct on the fire here, and the weather clears out and you get a big run like this here that squirted out, captured on kind of the IR from the night before last. Like, it's a bad deal to have a bunch of people out here kind of mid-slope, basically, above a steep canyon where you got afternoon winds. So even though the fire's kind of laying down often right now and moving its way slowly through here, this area still has a lot of potential to kind of be dangerous. So what does indirect attack look like? So let's look at some more of Soshua's. This is Soshua Burrows. He's with the Coldwater Collective. And he's driving around looking at things. And so, okay. So they've kind of done some snagging along this road. But what I want you to look at in this video as he's driving kind of down the east side of the fire towards where we were just looking, is just to count all the dead snags you see. There's a snag there. There's a big snag right there. There's another snag right there. There's a snag right here. There's a snag right here. And so firefighting-wise, snags kill firefighters. And they also carry the fire across the line. So prepping a fire line in this country involves having to take down a lot of snags, because to adequately prepare a fire line and to the point where the fire is going to come and burn up to it, or you're going to burn off of it, you have to cut all these snags down. And that's one of the reasons this kind of work is not getting done much. So like the company I work for, I worked for, Deer Creek Resources, our parent company, Firestorm, had a crew out in really similar ground here a couple years ago in the Calaveras Big Trees, prepping it for a burn like this. And they were cutting snags all day long, and a snag fell and it killed one of our guys. And that's what's on people's mind who, write burn plans. You have all the objective dangers of regular burning exist in prescribed fire too. So whether you're prepping fire line for a burn or a wildfire, you still have to come in here and deal with all these snags in this landscape. And you see also in here just that you have all this understory. There's a pretty light fuels on the ground here, because it's what we call closed needle, or short needle. So like these fir trees, the litter is pretty fine. Fire just kind of creeps along, but then it gets established in these clumps of trees and it torches up and it casts embers. So it's kind of a slow motion kind of thing until it's not. Until you get enough wind that then you've got sustained fire that is going through the crowns of these trees. So as far as like burning this out, prescribed fire wise, it's challenging because you can have a really hard time generating enough heat in these kind of short fir needles to get the fire moving. It could take like weeks to let the fire burn through here. And in the meantime, it's August and we're going into east wind season and you're worried that you're going to get a wind event. So it's kind of a, it's a pretty difficult assignment to them either way, either if they're trying to burn it well or they're just trying to contain the fire at all. So a lot of what we end up doing in this work of, sleuthing stuff out is kind of looking for clues in the background. Like I'll look at an old photo from a book about trains in Sterling City and I'll be looking for clues in the background here. So like here, these guys are rolling up to the spot. I gotta play it just because they sent it to me.
That is a prime view. Got that Zeke Lunder lookout, dog.
I hooked them up.
What do you think? Zeke nailed it or what? Dude, this is great.
So I'm happy I could help them out. So they rolled out to the big rock, and they. But what I thought also is interesting beyond them just making me look good is that kind of manzanita in there. Yeah, I don't know if I have anything else from Sasha. There's one more. So you got this mix at this elevation of the brush and the timber. And so here's kind of like the fire behavior that's right now slowly spreading into the bottom of Teakettle. So ample fuel, ample ladder fuels because this area hasn't burned forever. And it's just cruising along, but it is ending out having a pretty high severity as it does that because there's so much fuel there. So if we go back to our kind of sexy satellite imagery, it'll be interesting to look at the same imagery in a couple of days. But you see that so far this fire is like mainly burned with high severity as it's burned out of the Northport Kings River towards Teakettle. And you can see that kind of based on the depth of the flaming front here, this kind of bright orange color, like that's burning in the kind of fuels that we just saw the picture of that kind of heavy brush component. So as it moves up into Teakettle, it's going to move more into kind of the open, snaggy stuff, the red fir. And at the top here, it's pure red fir. Down lower, it's kind of white fir. So I thought I'd show you guys some pictures of what red fir looks like. If you can find it. 2020. Okay, so I had a great project in 2020. This is up north of Chico near Butt Mountain. And we thought that was funny. We had a map next to the toilet growing up. One of those bumpy plastic maps. And Butt Mountain was right next to where you looked like right at eye level when you're taking a poop. We thought that was funny. Butt Mountain. I don't know who Butt was, but now it could be the butt of many jokes. Okay, so this is Butt Mountain, and I'm showing this because this is red fir. So this is kind of similar to what you have in Teakettle. It's an area that hasn't burned for a long time. Red and white fir, and a lot of these trees have fallen down over the past, 50 to 100 years because of beetle kill and just natural mortality. There's this mix. These are all fir. It's kind of what we call a true fir forest. And trees blow down. Got this mix of snags. For this project, I was taking a lot of photos looking straight up because I was measuring canopy closure. Because that's one thing we looked at about when we kind of judge crown fire hazard, or like the ability of a forest fire to move through the crowns. One of the better tools we have for kind of quantifying canopy closure is just to take a photo straight up, and then you can use a computer and you can analyze it and say like, oh, in the center, it's like this is 75% canopy closure. And there's some nice big trees in there. There's some big red fir. There's some huge sugar pine in here. And this area just freaking roasted in the Dixie Fire. I did all this field work in 2020. Took my little kids to like all the coolest spots around between Chico and Westwood, getting paid to look at fuels, and then it just fucking nuked. Oh, YouTube's gonna like censor me. They're gonna take my money now that I said the F word. I'm sorry, but it did effing nuke. It just freaking incinerated, which is depressing, of course, because I took my kids out to some really cool old growth, and that stuff's gone now. But it's kind of like, well, what do you expect is going to happen in these areas where we haven't had fire for 100 years, and you've got all this material that falls down? Like, fire is kind of the recycler. And when you look at how much just dead and down material is in a lot of these true fir forests, especially after, several decades of drought and beetle kill, we have a lot of this kind of stuff out there. And so, for Teakettle, and a place like Butt Mountain, if your job is to come out here as a burn boss and burn this, like I said, under mild conditions, it can be really hard. You have to be really patient. If you light this on fire, it might take a week to move, 500 acres, or it might take 2 hours if you get a crazy, if it burns in the summertime, right? So the distinction there is that, like, if you look at Dixie Fire, the Dixie Fire burned under these extraordinarily high hazard conditions. So I just went back and found a chart for this is northwestern California, but it's basically, I've showed you guys these graphs before, and this is the energy release component, and this is 2021, like as around the time that about a month before Dixie started, and you can see in northwestern California that the current energy release component or fuel dryness was like above the maximum that had ever been recorded in the last 30 years. And the average is down here. So this is important because, like, right now for the Southern Sierra, we're not at the maximum ERCs, but we tend to get big fires like Dixie when we're at the most critical kind of drought driven energy release component potential. So driest it can possibly be. So this red fir, high elevation red fir, has what we would call a low frequency, high severity fire regime, meaning that because it's gets packed down with a ton of snow for months at a time, that really compresses the fuels. You have these short pine needles already that aren't very lofty and don't burn very well. This fuel type isn't conducive under kind of mild normal conditions, like under normal conditions at 7,000 or 8,000 feet. Like the snow doesn't melt until June, and it's barely dry by October, and then it rains again. And so you just don't have many fires that frequently that really can sustain themselves at that high elevation. So once every 100 years, you get a Dixie Fire type environment, and then it cranks. And in the past, maybe you had some giant trees that would survive that, and then everything else would get wiped out. And that was one way that it kind of maintained open spacing and everything else. So coming in here with the mission to prescribe burnness, you kind of have to ask, what's the objective? Are we just going to clean up all this little litter on the ground? Because if we do that, like, there's still, like, when you look at how dense this forest is, the reason that these forests really crank during extreme drought is because they're heat driven. The fires that get started in here, once you got like all this foliage on fire, it doesn't matter the canopy closure that we're talking about, like, oh, you want it to be 50% or below, blah, blah, blah. That doesn't matter once you've got this critical mass of heat and extreme kind of weather conditions like you saw in 2021. So that's just to kind of give you an idea of, like, okay, when we talk about high elevation red fir in the Teakettle, like, it's a complicated place to figure out how you want to manage it. It's complicated to achieve anything out here. Like, are you going to come out here with bulldozers and pile all this stuff? Are you going to, and if you burn this stuff and it is cool and moist enough to not get away from you and be a catastrophe, you get this huge amount of smoke. And all the smoke here around Butt Mountain would just go down and set in Chester, and, like, you wouldn't have a burn program anymore because old people would die of emphysema, and it would be your fault. And it would be, but so this is being as I haven't spent a lot of time crawling around Teakettle, I just thought I'd show you red fir in general and higher elevation. And it's kind of like the state of the world, right? Red fir's never been a super, the high country has never been like super lucrative or popular for logging. And that's why the Forest Service ended out owning it. If this was like all like beautiful big sugar pine and Doug fir, then the private people would have bought it before the Forest Service even existed. But so we got a bit of high elevation red fir out there that's kind of is interesting management challenge. And because these things are kind of beyond our control, in so many different ways, things like Teakettle are an interesting kind of story to watch unfold. What's wildfire going to do in here? Is it going to give us effects that were better than what we were going to achieve trying to burn this under kind of controllable, moderate severity, human-caused conditions? We're going to get a kind of hybrid. We're going to get this hybrid where they end up using their ignition devices and stuff to try to contain this fire using indirect attack during fire season, And so what it brings up for me oftentimes is that, hey, maybe the best time to do these burns in a place like Teakettle might be pretty dry end of hot fire season. because the rest of the year you might not even get it to burn. So complicated place. But thanks to Sash for sending me those things. We're gonna go up to the Klamath now. I like how this sticker is on a broken window, and Blake says that we helped her prep her house and survive the Thompson fire. Well, that's why we're doing it. Thanks for sharing, Blake. All right. Just before we leave here, I want to see if I'm going to load up my my latest. I'm going to get a new perimeter grab and just see if there's anything here that we're missing that's been flowing this afternoon. On the webcams, and here I'm looking for some ERC stuff. So this is the view of this fire from kind of the southeast this afternoon. And like as we said, the smoke kind of moves out to the east. So we're looking north here, and the smoke is kind of building in here. You don't see much going on. And this is really common on these kind of long duration events, is that the smoke is a big factor in affecting why things don't burn very explosively. And then once in a while, the smoke peels out, and then things go absolutely crazy. So this view is kind of when it stops panning around, which I think it will eventually. It's kind of similar to where I sent Sashua to that big rock. You're kind of looking. Ah, it's jerky. Okay. Is there a different one? All right. Yeah, so those guys were out there looking kind of this way from the big rock. So as far as kind of asking, like, how come they're not using helicopters? How come they're not using air tankers? Like, a lot of the fire is just too smoky. So this is kind of that north edge of the fire where we had the pictures of the fire burning in the brush. And Teakettle's up in here. And so the patience part of it is a lot. Like, you know, you might wait for a week, and then, like, you get a weather pattern change and everything burns in a day. You know, so that's just kind of fairly typical for California. All right, so that was just kind of looking down across this part of the fire burning up in a tea kettle. So let's go to Redding. We haven't heard anything about any of the fires in Deer Creek being anything to speak of. Kind of a good big picture view on a lot of the stuff is to turn on the satellite heat detections. And they're not good for seeing the, you know, kind of tactical detail. Yellow dots usually mean the fires are the heat is kind of gone. The heat's older than 24 hours. And then red and orange are the ones we're more interested in. So over here, there's not a lot of heat left showing on, I think, what was called the Little Fire. That is... This is the one we talked about that was burning kind of evenly on Sierra Pacific and on the Forest Service up by Redding. That fire hasn't really spread anymore since we talked about it. That's in the Car Fire scar. Up here is the Saddle Fire that we talked about also earlier in the season that burned on a similar mix of timber, private and public timber. So over here coming into this one that is the Peak Fire, we're kind of north of Weaverville. Weaverville's down here. Douglas City, Highway 3. Weaverville's down here. And here's Trinity Lake. This fire also hasn't been doing a lot, but it's spreading still on the south. So here's infrared for this fire, the Peak Fire from last night. And it was still, we talked about how it's been active on this south flank and kind of spotting, and we watched the spots over the last couple of days kind of fill in there. So you can see all those little spots. And then yesterday, they'd kind of grown larger, and now all those spots have kind of turned into one big active flank. And on this map, we've got the operations map. And so basically what you see is they've got a hand line up the north flank of the peak fire. And they've got a hand line that's indirect off the south flank on the kind of most logical ridge that's mixed with a little bit of dozer line. Generally, you see them put in hand line where you can't drive a bulldozer. You can drive a bulldozer 30 to 40% slope, more on depending on like how much rock is there and everything. Bulldozers don't like big rocks. So then you have hand line in places you can't run dozers. So they've got kind of a proposed hand line that's going to run off of Granite Peak down here towards the bottom. This fire just hasn't been moving very quickly to the flanks, which is pretty common on this steep kind of timber ground, that unless you have winds that are pushing it, it just likes to kind of burn up the hill. So they've got hand line here that's held for a couple of days now on the north flank. They've got indirect dozer line, and they've got what's that N stand for? Oh, not burnable, natural barrier along the top. So you can kind of see that, like, yeah, it's going to run up into the rocks. It's interesting that they're calling that natural barrier, but when you look at like the photography, it's like, well, there's rock up to there, and then it's timber. So who knows what'll happen there? But so far, this one's pretty mellow. So we're talking about energy release components and how like 2021 was super critically dry. If we look at those conditions for this year, this is current conditions for the Northwest Mountains. So right now we're between average and extreme, but the forecast is for it to kind of peak here in the next couple days. So going into like the middle of next week. So we're actually in kind of, it's been mild, you know, like when we look at where we've been over the last week or so, we've been below average on moisture, but it's coming up into kind of pretty extreme levels. So sometimes we get complacent when these fires burn for a long time. But the check-in is always that, like, okay, where are we at in the big picture? If your ERCs are below average, usually we're not going to have Dixie Fire type behavior. So seeing that we're going into more extreme ERCs is just a reminder that, okay, this fire's not out. It might not have done anything for a couple of days. But another big thing I wanted to talk about with all these fires is that we have, coming into the last week of August, this critical weather pattern, and I made a little comment about it on social media today, just that a lot of our worst fires happen like this week and next week, historically. So if we look at like the Slater Fire, the Bear Fire, where are my fire history layers? So like the Slater Fire, it's probably good if I have a separate layer for that. Too. Like the Bear Fire over here in Orville. Like this fire ran like 35 miles in a day from like way up in the middle fork of the Feather River down to Orville on September 8th. And that was part of a kind of big east wind event that happened all up and down the west coast of California. Same day, the Slater Fire blew up over here in Happy Camp and burned like crazy. 2020. This is the Slater Fire here. Started in Happy Camp and ran like way over past like Highway 199. Burned 21 miles. And one of the only reasons this fire didn't like get bigger was because it got hemmed in by these other fires that kind of, you can see it barely burn into these other fires. It kind of like was hemmed in by them and just went black. And the fire actually had kind of a wind that was coming more out of the east. But these recent fires kind of, it had to push north around those. Some people have done some modeling and said that if this fire hadn't had to fight against these recent fires, it would have burned all the way to Crescent City out here in that time that it had available to it with that strong east wind. So that's all to say, just that things are kind of subdued right now, but this time of year you really can't let your guard down. And it's also just kind of comes back to this, like, okay, hey, if we want to use fire for resource benefit, say we decided that, hey, we're getting good fire effects from this Dillon fire, we're just going to let it burn. You got to think of what might happen if you get a like 2 or 3 day east wind event on this thing. So here's Dillon, and let's turn off let's turn on just the outlines for a second. All right, so this is last night's Dillon Fire. And so we've been talking about the Creasy place, my buddy Max's place, and you can see the fire kind of came up to their place. It actually squirted up onto their place, but it hasn't really advanced onto their homestead. They got neighbors below them too that have been protected. And so they've just been kind of hanging out here with this fire kind of all around them. There's some new spot fires on this fire that are kind of concerning. This is Dillon. We're between Happy Camp and Orleans now. And there's some spots out here that cross the river that are kind of have potential to become part of the bigger story. Part of the bigger story here is that like this area the spots are in burned 8 years ago. And this area up here burned in 2021. So like as we've said, this fire is already fairly contained on this side by a recent burn, and we don't expect it to like, it's just impossible to have like a Dixie fire type fire in the Klamath, because when we look at our fire history here, with blue kind of being the last 10 years, green being, well, blue's the last 5 years, green is the 10 years before that, yellow is the 10 years before that. This landscape is so pockmarked with fire history, you just don't have big contiguous areas of unburned fuel where a Dixie type million-acre fire could happen. But you do have potential here for this fire if it gets strong east winds in the next couple weeks to blow out and burn, you know, in this 17-year-old mill fire scar. Another thing that's happening over here, someone says, what's the deal with so few cameras in the Klamath? Well, I think one part of it might be the cameras are paid for by PG&E in a lot of places because PG&E got in trouble for burning down Paradise and for starting a Dixie fire. And as part of their settlement, they've had to spend a lot of money on mitigations. So, and reparations, right? So all these places are webcams, all these yellow dots. But yeah, PG&E doesn't serve this area. This is all Pacific Core, Warren Buffett's company. So it may be that there's less cameras up here because it's not PG&E's territory, and fires that get started up there aren't PG&E's problem. And maybe Warren Buffett hasn't figured out yet that he can buy webcams to buy his way out of jail when he starts big fires. Because Slater Fire that we were just talking about was started by Pacific Core. This one here. And they're on the hook for a bunch of dollars for the people they killed and landscapes that got devastated. So, anyway, there's a couple other fires we want to talk about in the Klamath. Chris Waters is telling stories here on my text, but I'm on the line. I'm online, Waters. Maybe you should just dial in and you can tell stories to everyone. Chris Waters is a friend of mine who was, he's a good storyteller. And he's already telling me stories. I'm on the line, brother. When he gets to this part of the video, he'll realize. All right. So anyway, up here by Syad Valley, there's another fire that's emerging that we're going to talk about a little. We got Wairika over here and Happy Camp over here, and in between we've got Syad Valley. And south of Syad, there's a new fire that's called the Blue Fire. And there's some other fires that have already happened out here this year. And it feels like ancient history now. They weren't very big. But this is kind of Blue Fire taken yesterday at noon. And it had quite a bit of heat to it. But this area also burned severely 11 years ago in the 2014 Happy Camp complex. And so in a lot of ways, like, well, what's fire doing out here that is damaging. It's, I mean, it is killing trees that have become reestablished, but it's also some of the trees that are well enough established in this brush will survive, and then those are the fire hardened trees that you want. So you don't want to just let every single tree survive unmolested by fire, because then you got a bunch of trees that when you do have a fire are eventually going to like just, none of them are going to survive, right? So fire has always kind of been the genetic selector of the trees that should survive. Our forests are based on like, and so trees that have like weaknesses that are susceptible to like beetles hitting them and then pitch falling out of the beetle holes and dripping down a tree, those trees catch on fire more easily and they die in a fire. And they have selected themselves to be killed by fire by being the trees that couldn't survive the beetles. So this fire, it's just kind of like our other fires over here, like tactically difficult to fight fire in this super steep, nasty brush country full of snags from a 10, 11-year-old burn. And so that's where we're at in this story, really, is another part. Okay, so here's what I think would sum this up is like we can kind of tell stories about the landscape based on how long it's been since the fire happened. So if I come in here and I turn on my fire history layer and I say, okay, like let's talk about everything that's burned in the last 5 years. Everywhere on this landscape that's burned in the last 5 years has something in common with the other area that's burned in the last 5 years. Be it like the age of the brush, the height of the brush, the density of the undergrowth, the amount of fuel from dead snags that have fallen down. Okay, well, how about those areas that have burned twice since 2010? Those are the kind of like the light blue areas. These areas here probably have something in common with these areas over here. Or with these areas over here. So that fire history kind of becomes, it's multi kind of dimensional. But when you see a fire like this one burning in this scar here, it might have some similarity to the Butler fire that burned earlier this summer. Let's see if we can turn that on. Butler burned over here in Forks of Salmon. We got a lot of good fire effects out of that fire. Actually, I just opened up... where did that go? I found some imagery today of Butler that shows how many trees survived in this 11-year-old burn. So all it's that is to say that, like, yeah, we don't know exactly what's going to happen here in the blue fire. Right now, with the weather being kind of still and cooperative, like Type 1 helicopters are really effective in slowing fire in these kind of brushy fields, but you still have to get in there and kind of chop down snags and stuff like that. And this fire is kind of at one of those critical junctures where if it doubles in size, so if we look at last night's IR versus today's spread. All right, so they flew it this afternoon, and it was 400 acres. So you get to this juncture where it's like, oh, it's gone. Like, it's too big. We're not going to pick it up. And folks like to say, oh, they should have jumped on it when it was small. It's like, well, I was listening to the radio all day Tuesday, and it's freaking busy. It's really busy. You know, there was like, when we look at our kind of map of where all the fires are, like, there's a limit of how many Type 1 helicopters you can rally and how many hand crews and everything else. And the people that set priorities are probably going to put a pretty low priority on this fire here that's burning out in the middle of nowhere. But the folks that like to throw the most stones are going to say, oh, they just monitored it for a week. It's like, well, they monitored it because they thought it was more important to send Type 1 helicopters to Deer Creek Canyon so they didn't burn up Butte Meadows, or they thought it was more important to send them to the Peak Fire so they don't burn up people living around Trinity Lake. But when you look at kind of like the ownership like where you have structures and stuff. It's like, yeah, you have some structures over here in Syed, but the rest of this landscape, the only place you see dots out here are places that the computer saw a square rock and thought it was a cabin, because this is all AI. These structure maps are all like a robot looking at satellite imagery. So this fire has some potential. Now that it's 400 acres, I think this is a fire that was burning earlier this year. So it'll burn for a while. But all this stuff is really interesting when you just kind of, once you divorce it of its drama and kind of hysteria and potential loss and burning up your friend's house. Like, it becomes this really interesting kind of learning lessons everywhere you look. Oh, why did it do that? Why did it do that? Hey, what happens if you put 10 miles an hour east wind on this? And that's the only way we really learned. Like, the models we have for predicting fire spread, like, they're pretty terrible. Type 1 helicopter is a big, heavy helicopter that can drop, like, more than 1,000 gallons of water. I don't know the exact definition, but I'll show you a picture of what they do. Somewhere. They're impressive. I don't have anything queued up, sorry. Yeah, someone's talking about there's not cell service. Digital Path is a internet company, and they now run a lot of the webcams for the West Coast because they have this kind of microwave internet technology they brought to bear on it. Okay, so that is kind of our active fire situation for Northern Cal. I'm going to show a little bit of stuff from I'll look at the questions, and then I'm going to show a little bit of stuff from burning in a Klamath, because one of the reasons that the Creasy's place hasn't burned yet over here on T-Bar Road, and sorry for the swerve driving, is because Max has spent his whole life working in the woods as a biologist and backcountry guy and just Klamath mountain man. His kids got a sawmill, they got a skid steer, they manage their land. And so as part of managing that land, and the way that I got to meet them was I got involved with landowner burning and kind of burning training over in the Klamath Mountains back in 2013. And then went over and helped run prescribed fire trainings there for about 6 years. And so this is just, I just wanted to show some imagery of like what that stuff looks like. We had CAL FIRE out there helping out, but a lot of the fire that gets put on the ground over there is not put on the ground by the state, because a lot of places CAL FIRE firefighters are not allowed to put fire on the ground during prescribed burn landowner burns, because CAL FIRE doesn't want any of the liability. So this is at Max Creasy's place, 2015. And this is pine needles. Really, if you have a thinned out pine stand with no like low hanging branches, it can be really easy to burn, and you're not going to like have flames going up and kill your mature trees, and the pine needles burn and then it's done. They have a horse and a mowed pasture, and the horses really kind of help keep the grass down, and so you can just burn. Like here, we didn't even hardly need a fire line because the grazed grass was so kind of low that you could just come through after this and just kind of like kick the duff with your foot, and the fire is out. And I think that oftentimes people think that they need a lot more prep than they actually do to burn here. Like, you know, people think, oh, you can't burn in an area unless you thin all the brush and everything else. And it's like, well, depending on when, like, here we're burning at dusk, and see a lot of the stuff that's been lit here is just even going out by itself. So you have a lot of control over the fire effects you get based on when you light, what the fuel moistures are, how the temperature is. But this has definitely helped save this particular community of people, is that they've been actively thinning, putting fire on the ground in a major way for a long time. And it is fun working over there. It is like its own planet. Here's Shiloh Springstead. She and I on this day were kind of fire effects monitor, so we were just checking out the conditions, the fuel moistures and everything else, and trying to figure. And look, we're going to burn through this area that looks really thick, but the fire effects we're going to get in there by backing fire down is going to kill these little fir trees, kill some of these oaks, not torch up and kill these big trees. And a lot of the prescribed fire training we're doing is using, teaching people basic firefighting techniques, like, because you need if you're going to be working on prescribed burn, you're basically there as a contingency firefighting resource, right? Like, if we have an escape, these people all need to know how to dig handline and run the fire engine and everything else. So these burn trainings, part teaching people to be a firefighter, part teaching them to be a fire lighter, teaching them to think about fuels and moisture and weather. You see Berkeley fire researcher. And night burning is great. You can get a lot done in conditions that would be too kind of dry and spicy in the daytime. All right, what else we got? All right, we already looked at Butt Mountain. This is some video that Will Harling shot of burning at night over there.
And willows and alders and black locust.
Black locust, where'd you see that?
Black locust is all over Tashanik, right near the dance grounds. No, he's the firing boss tomorrow. Adam's taking the tens of thousands of acres of grassland he burned in Texas.
All right, Will. Will's the ambassador for good fire. Nice thing about burning in the Klamath is that people over there have gotten, please rig the algorithm in favor of the channel. Like that comment. We need all of them people to figure out how cool this stuff is. So, nice thing about burning in the Klamath is they've built a lot of trust there with the locals, the local fire department, with the Forest Service, with Cal Fire. And also, they're far enough out there that they can kind of get away with some stuff. The Cal Fire unit being based out of like Wairika, they're like, man, we know you guys are way out here in the middle of nowhere, and that you can look after your own business. And so, like here, we got we kind of spent a couple of days prepping, backing our way into, burning the ridges above this and everything, but then putting the fire on the ground at a meaningful scale, right? Like, we're not going to kind of solve our community fire hazard problems by burning like little half-acre plots in people's backyards. Like, we need to burn whole mountainsides. And so that's what we did here. This was kind of like the fourth day. The previous couple days we'd burned stuff farther up the hill. So if this fire got away from us, it wasn't going to go to the top of the mountain because we'd already burned the top of the mountain. And the fun thing about burning this particular unit is, like, this unit's right above the town of Orleans. And Orleans is a wild place. And it was like a Friday night or something. And we got this all going, and then the sun was going down, and you could hear people in town just yelling. People are hooting, hollering. Like, it was awesome. Like, fire is magnificent, right? And people were genuinely stoked that we were doing this to protect them from, a bigger fire coming down the mountain at a less kind of favorable time. So that was, like, I'd say, like, whenever you're burning and you hear dogs barking and people yelling, like, you're in the wooey, right? What else we got here? I think we still have some more Harling video. Oh, there's just a little more Sashwa video here, showing those conditions in Teakettle. Okay, so another cool thing about burning on the Klamath is that people really make the connection there between what's happening in the rivers and what's happening in the forests. And so on one of our days off from burning out there, we went and hung out in the Salmon River. And this is what's going on there, is you've got these enormous spring run Chinook swimming in this super clear water. those fish require healthy forests to like not go extinct. And that's what motivates a lot of people over there to do this forestry related work. A lot of people over there are doing forestry and fire. Got into it because they became, passionate about fisheries. But there's a reason it's called the Salmon River, right? Cal salmon. No more night burning, courtesy of Harling.
Whoop!
These oaks, the moss likes to burn on the oaks, and the fire gets up in the oak trees. And that can be a problem. Like if you're prepping, if you're going to burn in your yard, you want to try to like rake the moss off the oaks that are right near your control line. Because once the fire gets up in the oaks, it gets in the knot holes and into the rotten wood, and then you've got fire up in a tree. And then you have to chop the tree down, or you don't have to do anything if the fire's like well inside your control unit. But if this is like right next to your line and you got this like branch on fire over your fire line, then it becomes a big hassle, right? So either you need to have someone there with water to squirt water on it, or you have to scrape the moss. But once it starts to go up there, it's hard to keep it from happening. And then I have one last video, and this is a kind of a joke.
This is high-end apparel we're talking about.
These people were not part of our event. I think they are like
Exactly.
growing pot
This
on the
is
next property
October.
over or something. Yeah. So we're not saying that you should do this, but and Will probably get mad at me for like putting this in the public because someone's gonna say that it's a bunch of yahoos out there burning, and we're yahoos, but we don't do it in shorts and t-shirts. I don't know who the hell these guys were, but they were like pretty stoked that they got to do this for us, and then we sent them away. All right. Check out Prescribed Fire. We like talking about it because it's hopeful work. It's like for all the reasons I talked about getting started here in the broadcast. It's really daunting to figure out how it's gonna happen, if it's even possible in a lot of places. But it's one of the only tools we have at scale to manage forests, and it's what people have always used. So we want you to check out our website and buy a Squatch Duty shirt, because everyone should be responsible for burning, including Sasquatch. So you can, if you get on our website, you can click on this Sasquatch, and you can buy Squatch stickers. You can buy Squatch shirts. You can just buy more conservative Lookout Topo shirts. You can buy coffee mugs. You can buy steel fish if I put some more up. You can buy an axe if I make some more. But you can support the Lookout through our shop. And we have another cool thing going on here. We've got a tool raffle. Lookout Superfan donated a bunch of nice kind of landscaping tools. So if you want to go out, if you're inspired to go out and cut your brush, you can bid on our Fano pole saw and an old axe and a nice pair of pruners. You can buy tickets here, $5 a ticket. We're going to do the drawing on the Equinox. Got a couple nice saws. So you get to that through the Lookout. Okay, people. Yeah, smash that like button. Chris Waters, see you in the comments now. You caught up to current times. He said we're in Shaver Lake and we did all the power line right away, logging for the Helms project. I can't even tell. Like, Waters is the best storyteller. Chris Waters says, when I was a kid, that Teakettle area was one of the places my family did some logging. My dad's logging operation was based in that area. All right. Well, so we'll get Waters on here. Waters is the master storyteller, and we're going to do some, once he's done working for lawyers, we're going to get him out and do a kind of danger in plain sight kind of video. Speaking of which, danger in plain sight, while you're at the Lookout, we want people to watch this and share this too. We just finished episode 5 of 5. You can watch all 5 episodes here, and we're pretty proud of it. So I'm going to play a little bit of that just to kind of he's out of here. Since it's been hanging out in the background the whole time. Just to finally come out here and like stand where the fire started, you can really feel how this land breathes. You know, how the winds blow over the mountains here. And you can turn around and look at the canyon behind us here and see like how Santa Ana winds would have funneled through there and why the fire moved so quickly.
It's beautiful.
This is the dream. They have the ocean view and see whales out there.
You get the sea breeze constantly. The temperature never, I mean, maybe a couple of days a year goes over 80 degrees. I mean, it's fantastic.
It can be paradise and the most beautiful place and hell on earth all in the same package. Southern California's chaparral has a kind of infrequent high severity fire regime, meaning that fires don't happen very often, but when they do, they're driven by extreme weather and they will often burn to the ocean. LA County Fire Department, you know, they're some of the best fire departments in the world. Save the city over and over and over. The only time that they can't save the city is when it's a frickin' like force 4 tornado of fire. Listen to the scanner traffic in the first like hour and a half. The air attack was saying it's going to the ocean. You know, it was clear pretty quickly that that was sure to happen. I hadn't really pictured it, but we're in this kind of a little saddle here on this long ridge, and you can just see how the wind just kind of piled through this notch and why the fire could just accelerate. The wind was already downsloping, it pinched through this notch here, and the fire then ran, and we're just kind of looking straight out towards the ocean through where it ran.
Yeah, we could see right down Temescal Canyon where it pushed.
You can see that by the time it impacted that neighborhood, it was, you know, it wasn't like it just came up the hill in one spot and you could park a fire truck there. It was like half a mile wide when it first impacted the neighborhoods. And so then immediately you had burning structures, lofting embers out into, and you can just see how everything out there beyond that is destroyed from both the push of the fire and all the embers that started fires out ahead of it.
Yeah, it really had enough room where it could get a full head of steam to impact that community in a distributed way, but not so far that, you know, you could really mobilize resources to start doing structure protection or anything like that.
Well, and you can see that in this first half mile, there's no access. There's no place to bring fire engines in.
No place to get an anchor, not even think about getting an anchor point.
So should people be living up here or no?
I mean, who are we to say?
Yeah. Yeah, I'm not saying people shouldn't live up here. I'm just saying that we have opportunities right now to rebuild in a way that is more sensible. We should go forward planning on this happening again.
Not rebuilding with wood fences.
Right. Yeah, take a minute to take a pause. There's a lot of people who've spent entire careers thinking about this stuff. And there's a lot of lessons that have been learned the hard way by a lot of people, and there's a lot of places where people have been burned out more than once. Red flag warnings, they're based on fire hazard, and fire hazard is a function of how dry the fuel is, how hot the temperature is, and how strong the wind is blowing. The whole idea of evacuation planning becomes even more important when you're in a place like we are, with thousands of people that are all going to try to leave at once. It's a total nightmare. If you go outside and it's super hot and windy and the palm trees are bent over, like that tells you that you're in hot, dry conditions. It's a good time to revisit your evacuation plan to make sure you have a go bag.
So we can get another view by going down this road here along that mid slope, and then Skull Rock is right on the other side if you want to.
Okay, yeah, that sounds good.
All right.
I want to take a picture of you, Tim, in front of these
Pretty flowers. I'm going to be looking thoughtfully off in the distance.
We're on the hill above the origin of the Palisades fire. We can hear the jackhammers and the backup beepers of them cleaning up burned homes below us here. And it's just, there's so much, we've seen so much in this period of time. I think that's a takeaway for me, is there's a lot of different stories going on here, and to ride through it and kind of just to flow through all those stories
and then up here is kind of mind-boggling.
Hope you guys got some lip readers out there. Here I'm spilling my guts to empty room. All right. Well, if you're still watching after all that, thanks for watching. We're really proud of this series. You know, the whole purpose of the Lookout is to tell these stories and help people understand the landscape around them. And I was just saying when it was, and I'm thanking Chris Waters for texting me in the middle of that to tell me to unmute. Just saying that when we're out there, I'm really glad to have some professional help, because you know, if you guys watch this live stream, you know that it's kind of chaotic of me. Just like, I'm not real linear. Throw you some stories here, throw you some stories there, then we jump somewhere else in the map. So working with a professional team, those guys are great. They kind of helped us frame a story. They brought some order to chaos, and then we just rode our bikes around and filmed a bunch of stuff, and somehow they made this magic happen with music and sound and overlays, and so really appreciate Coldwater Collective, our partners on this project, and check it out. Check it out. The more you guys watch it, the more, you know, we tell your friends, because I want to go to advertisers, like our advertisers on this series, Burnbot, Firebox, Danko Meredith, Fireside. I want to be able to go to those guys and say, like, look, lots of people are seeing this, and you should give us money to pay for these trips, because it was expensive to put this together. So please help share it. If you guys want to support the Lookout, it's free. The easiest way to support us is free, is share our stuff. Tell your friends about it. If you got connections with the media, we'd love to talk about this on the LA Times, LAist, San Francisco Chronicle, anyone. We've had a hard time tracking down kind of mainstream media people to review this and help us get it out to people. So best way you can support the Lookout is tell your friends about this stuff and share this video, because that's why we're doing it. We want people to get the information, and the side benefit is that I'm making a living at it now. So if we can keep doing, we want to kind of, in the off season when we're not stuck in doing live stream every day, we want to be doing trips like this. Go to LA, go to Marin County, go anywhere that we feel like there's places to. We learned as much on this trip from each other as anything, right? People who spent their whole careers working in these fields, we still learn a lot from each other when we go outside and go look at stuff. So that's my goal. Is like, I've been arguing with people on Facebook about prescribed fire or fire management. It's also complex. We have to figure out what we agree on and go out in the woods and talk about that. So thank you for supporting the Lookout, and check out our stuff. And I'm gonna play my sponsor reel and get on with it. Thanks for chiming in here, Waters, and we want to get you on, so let us know when you can come on, Waters, and we'll do like a Zoom, or even better, come on in real person.